There is an extra set of templates that can be cut out and still leave your book intact so that you'd have what you need in an emergency. You need some fishing line or other source of non-conducting wire. In a number of the sources it recommends that you use the non-wax dental floss. But some of the dental floss I've had trouble separating, and so I personally prefer the 2-pound monofilament fishing line. You'll need to go to a specialty fishing shop to get this. And then various tools that we'll be going over as we do the manufacturing. You'll need a piece of bell wire, which is what we use for the charger, and then the cover. There's a lot of pieces of plastic that you'd have around the home that would work sufficiently, such as, say, the wrapping that cheese comes in if it was cleaned off sufficiently. And then one very important feature is this chamber has to be perfectly dry in order to work. If there's any water molecules in the chamber, then the static electricity will jump from water molecule to water molecule and leave the chamber and give you a false reading. And so we need a desiccant. A simple way to make a very effective desiccant is you take sheetrock, a simple wall board that you have around your home or part of your home, cut off a piece, you remove the top and bottom pieces of paper, cut it into chunks that are approximately square, and then this would be placed in your oven at 400 degrees for approximately an hour. If you put it in a can over a fire and got it to red hot, it would only take about 15 minutes, but you want to drive all the moisture out of that. And then after it becomes a desiccant, then of course it has to be kept dry. And so you need to seal it up in a jar like this until it was time and ready to use. A jar like this, or a peanut butter jar with a wide mouth, also works well to actually place the meter inside of the jar after it is charged, place desiccant around it, and then it would remain in virtually a charged condition until it was ready to use. There's a small amount of background radiation received from the sun, and so it would slowly go back together, but it would stay charged for well over a year if the chamber was completely dry. And even out in the open, I've had them stay charged for months at a time. Okay, let's begin with the manufacturing process. First of all, we have the can. We have the desiccant, which we'll be adding later on. We go to our pages here, find the page that has the label on it, and we'll cut that label out. We've now placed the label on the can. It's been taped from the seam around and taped again on the seam on the other side. You can see now that there's a place that says holes here. These are for the stop threads that will keep the foil leaves from swinging over and actually touching the side of the can and losing their charge. And in the book it suggests punching with a nail, and that's good if you don't have a drill, but a drill I think works a lot faster and a lot quicker. We've now drilled the 4 holes, and we're also going to take care of the top of the rim here. We want to make a small notch so that when these threads hang in there, when you take the cover on and off, it does not move them. This is not entirely necessary. You can simply tape them down there and be very careful when you remove the top, but I think it's a good idea. We start with the file and make a small notch, and then we'll take a hacksaw and make the notch a little bit more square. The notches are complete, and now I'm going to thread. I've used a large needle and I'm using the dental floss now. I'm going to go through these and place the stop threads in place. The stop threads are now in place, and I'm going to place tape over each of these holes so that there's not a place where moisture can enter the can from the sides. The next step is to take this page, which is the template for the cover. You take and cut your plastic in a round circle. This is your scale down here. You cut the scale out, and you tape the scale to the bottom facing up so that it's protected from the top. The next step is the manufacture of the aluminum foil leaves. This is probably the most difficult part, but it is certainly doable. We want to make these leaves 8 ply thick, so we fold it once. Being very careful to get it as flat and as even as possible. Fold it again, making sure that we have some of the edges extremely straight. more fold will do it. That aluminum leaf is now 8-ply thick. We've cut out the little template. Put the template down, take a pen, and trace around the leaf, very carefully on the corner, because this is the standard size. If the size of this leaf is off, then your meter will be off slightly, although not significantly. Your pen will make a groove more than a mark. And then there's a line here in the middle. We want to draw on the line, and so that will make a groove in the aluminum foil, so we know where the fold line is. So 2 of the lines are cut lines and 1 line's a fold line. It looks like that. We'll cut that out, and we're going to do this twice because it requires 2 leaves. Now there's one other little thing that we need to do now. They found that when the corners are very sharp, that they can actually cause the meter to lose static electricity because the corner can direct the charge to jump there. So we just cut off just a little nick of each corner. Then we'll take a straight edge, lay the straight edge down, and fold this up on the fold mark so we get a very straight fold there also. Now if you want to fold it over and cut off the corners on this top also, you can. All of the directions doesn't say so, but it may be a good idea. I don't know. This next part of the meter is the most precision and difficult part, and it's a little bit difficult, but certainly doable. What I've done is I've taken this page and I've taped it down on the table on the 4 corners so that it does not move. I've also placed tape in the section where it says place tape here, so that we have a flat surface that when we place the tape down on top of this, we can pull it up easily without ripping the paper. So the string is going to go across this line. We're going to place the aluminum leaf here. Then we're going to take a little bit of epoxy glue and glue that down. Now, in the book it suggests that you can use tape on top of that, but it's very cumbersome. It does work. We're also going to glue the edges with a piece of toothpick or whatever, so that they will not come apart during the operation of the meter. I'm going to take a pen now and mark approximately 1 inch from the center on the paper. And this will tell me a reminder not to touch the thread that close to the meter, because if that thread is dirty, it will allow static electricity to go out. So we have the thread stretched across here. I now very carefully take and slip my aluminum leaf underneath here. And remember, we're going to be doing this twice because we're making 2 leaves. We place that in the meter, place that evenly along there. I'm going to take a little bit of this epoxy, and we'll very carefully glue that in place. And believe me, this goes a lot faster than with the tape, but the tape does work. And the tape has the advantage is you don't have to wait for it to dry. It doesn't take a lot of this epoxy, just enough to seal that down. Place it in place there, and then we mash it down, and it's glued shut. And that's aluminum leaf number 1. We'll do this again. Okay, we have now taken the threads and suspended these leaves inside of the can. You can see that the stop threads keep it from hitting the sides, so we move that back and forth. And we'll now go on to the next stage, which will be making the cover. The cover, the ideal plastic is the thicker vinyl window plastic, but a lot of plastics will work. Saran wrap or thin plastic like that is generally too light. We're going to be making this cover to go exactly crosswise with the 0 in the middle. We're going to tape this down with duct tape rather loosely, and I'll put a layer of tape on the inside so this can remove easily. And then we'll trim it up after that. We've made our first pleat with small pieces of duct tape. Now some of these jobs, like hanging the leaves and putting the pleats around, if you have an extra set of hands, it really speeds things up. Now we'll take a second layer and go all the way around. Then we'll remove this cover and we'll put this tape on the inside to make it slick so it'll come on and off. And then we'll trim up the bottom. And duct tape is the best tape for doing this step here, but other tapes will work. So remove the cover and then we'll trim it up. Okay, we've now got this taped inside and out, and I'm going to go around now and trim it up. And if it's too tight, you'll find that it doesn't hurt to put a little slit, not going all the way up, but around in a few places, so that the side slips on just a little bit easier. Okay, and then we'll test that and make sure that we can put this on and off easy enough. Okay, our cover fit. We did find that a pair of needle nose pliers or a multi-tool is nice to be able to grab some of these edges and pull them over the side. We're getting close to done now. We're going to take out another little page that's entitled Instructions, Reminder for Operators, and we're going to be placing that on the back side right here and taping this down so that we have that with us always. And then we're going to take tape and we're going to tape around the entire thing so that the entire container is now waterproof. The next step is to add the desiccant to the bottom. This is desiccant has previously been prepared and cooked in the oven. We open it up and very quickly we're going to use these as a forceps, and we're going to add the individual pieces to the bottom, making sure that we do not have more than one on top of another, making sure that there is none on top of the others. Desiccant's now on the bottom, so we want to very quickly put the lid on, and we'll move on to the next stage. Next we're going to make a stop or a hold, actually they call it a seat, for the ruler. On the label there's a place that says secure piece of lead pencil here. A piece of dowel or a piece of wood would work equally well. We'll need to cut away any of the skirt so that we can place it high enough. And this notch, of course, will be a good reference point from now on. It will show us where to place the lid. You can see the line right there. We're going to tape this down so that the pencil is right there. The last thing we're going to make is this charging wire. There's a template in the book that shows you how long. You want to expose a little bit of the bare wire in the front and back. About in the center, you want to take a little bit of Band-Aid or tape, and you'll make a little bit of a seat, and so when this pushes in against the plastic, this will kind of sit against there and kind of shut the hole off. And at the end you notice there's two strings. One string has a piece of tape on it. We'll use this one to kind of pull it where we want it to pull, and then we'll tape it down. Then this one allows us to, with our hand, move that close because we want it as close as we can get without touching those aluminum leads. And then when the meter is charged, then we take this string, pull it out of the way, tape it down again until we're ready to charge it again. We'll need a hole for this to go through, and the easiest way I found to make the hole is to just take this end here, which is fairly sharp, go back a little ways, and punch the hole in, force this through, put it in like that, and we'll set it and get ready to charge. Okay, we're now ready to charge the meter. We have a clear plastic draftsman's ruler which works really well. Glass also works, and there's other types of plastic or PVC that will work really well. As you see, I'm holding it with a piece of paper folded over a number of times, about at least 8 ply on each side. This will keep the static electricity from jumping through the ruler to my hand. The book recommends using paper to charge it, but I find that a rabbit skin works really nice, or if you just washed your hair, rubbing in your hair works really good. Rub it back and forth like this. We can run across there and see, yeah, it does have nice charge. Again, we hold this close to, but not touching the wires like that. My finger's out of the way a little bit. And we rub this across like this. See those leaves jumped? That is a charged meter. Now the one disadvantage I've found with this meter is that if there's a lot of moisture in the air, it's very difficult to get a static electricity charge. In that case, the book does describe how to make a dry bucket, but it is a difficult process. For that reason, a charged meter that was put ahead of time in a very dry container like this, waiting for an emergency, would be a good way to do it. Now we'll simply move the wire out of the way. If I put that wire next to it and just touch it, it would immediately lose its static electricity charge. Now we want to measure that, so we take and we're going to place the ruler on the seat, place our forehead on the meter, and we measure, and it looks like it is at 8 on one side, and the other side is sticking out about 4. And so 8 and 4 gives you a separation of 12, and then we'd simply go over here to the side and measure how quickly they come back together. This meter could save your life.
These are particles of radioactive fallout. And this is how a single particle looks magnified several hundred times. A radioactive piece of matter from a nuclear explosion. These few particles can't do us any significant harm. But should there be a nuclear attack, many billions of them would fall from the sky and settle to Earth, releasing radiation that could cause sickness or death in the area where they fall. To begin with, it may be surprising to know that radiation is something we live with every day. Far back in time, back before there was an Earth, there were flaming fireballs in space. We call them stars. And there are millions upon millions of them. Each star, like our own sun, is a raging nuclear furnace that shoots out showers of particles too tiny to be matter as we conceive it, along with invisible forces that we call radiation. This radiation and these particles travel through space at fantastic speeds until they strike some other matter which may make new flares of radioactivity. They strike wandering asteroids, moons, and planets such as our own. Everything in space, Earth included, receives this radiation.
Skies partly cloudy this afternoon, clearing by...
Background radiation is all around us in tiny quantities. Nature even planted unstable atoms deep inside the Earth itself. They decay one by one, here and there, in a barrage of inconceivably small and silent explosions. Each explosion is another spark of radiation. All life on Earth has reached its present form in company with radiation from this naturally occurring radioactivity. Extremely thin, with extremely low-level intensity, it has always been with us. It is nothing new. We don't worry about the small amounts of natural background radiation. But to safely handle larger amounts, we must keep our distance and shield ourselves. For as the amounts increase, so do the dangers. The amount of energy generated by a nuclear explosion is enormous. Near the crater area, there is almost total destruction from blast and heat. And now, large amounts of pulverized debris and molten earth are pulled up into the mushroom cloud. This is where radioactive fallout is formed. The radioactive atoms produced in the explosion join with the particles of earth and debris. The mushroom-shaped cloud forms and climbs higher. It now contains billions of highly radioactive particles of matter that we call fallout. The strong winds of the upper altitudes go to work on the cloud, blowing it off in one or more directions. Gravity tugs on the particles. The larger and heavier ones sink toward the ground, while the lighter particles continue to drift with the wind. Some of the lightest particles remain suspended in the upper atmosphere. As time passes, their radioactivity grows weaker, so that the longer they remain aloft, the less dangerous they are. But the heavier particles, spread by high-altitude winds, fall to the ground within 24 hours. Several miles from the explosion, they are about the size of table salt or fine sand. These are the most dangerous, because they carry the greatest number of radioactive atoms and so emit the largest amount of nuclear radiation. Which brings us to an all-important fact. Deadly as radiation can be, it has a fortunate weakness: a rapid rate of decay. And this gives us an invaluable ally: time. Suppose a nuclear explosion takes place at 12 noon. By 1 o'clock, the total force of the residual radiation is at a high level. By 7 o'clock, it's down to 1/10. In 2 days, although still dangerous, it's only 1/100th. But in 2 weeks, it's only 1/1,000th. With this decay rate in mind, consider radioactive fallout conditions which might confront us after a massive attack. Within an hour, fallout would be a serious problem in the vicinity of explosions which occur on or near the ground. By 7 hours after the attack, the fallout area covers more and more of the country as the prevailing winds expand the fallout in a downwind pattern. 24 hours. 48 hours. Without shelter, millions would face death. A few days later, those who have taken shelter will survive. In many areas, people can even leave shelter for brief periods of time to carry out important tasks. Within 2 weeks, most people can leave their shelters for longer periods as the radioactivity decays to lower levels. The lesson is obvious. We must shield ourselves from radiation through the dangerous period. To do this, we need more than time. Fortunately, we have another ally: distance. The greater our distance from the fallout particles, the less radiation we receive. You would receive less radiation in the middle of a tall building than you would receive on the top or bottom floors, because there would be more distance and partitions between you and the source of the radiation, the fallout particles which would cover the roof and the ground around the building. Only an insignificant amount would get inside. And finally, along with decay rate and distance, we have still another and very important ally: mass. When highly radioactive fallout covers our immediate area, we can shield ourselves through the most dangerous period by using the sheer weight of any material. But the protecting material must be heavy. To shield out some 99% of the radiation, you would need about 5.5 feet of wood, or 2 feet of earth, or 1 1/3 feet of concrete, or 1/2 foot of steel. Even though the thickness of these materials varies, they all weigh the same. Taking a house as an example, it offers a small amount of mass and distance from radiation, but not enough protection in an area of heavy fallout. The solution is plain. Fallout shelters are the best defense against nuclear radiation. Whether in a home for a single family or a large community type in an apartment building, they offer the kind of protection from radiation you would probably need in case of a nuclear attack. But the best shelter would be worthless unless it was used. Most people find it hard to understand how silent, invisible rays, which cannot even be felt, could be so damaging. Let's see what happens when radiation penetrates the body and attacks the cells. What is a cell, and what happens when it is attacked? It's a simple organism which reproduces itself by dividing. Our bodies are made up of millions of cells. They're the building blocks of our blood and tissues. Now, powerful radiation strikes, and cells are injured or destroyed. If radiation stops before the accumulated dose is too great, almost all of the damage eventually will be repaired. If radiation continues, there are some cells less able to function at top efficiency. Should the body fall behind in its recovery, severe illness or death could result. The key then is the amount, the total dose of radiation received. We measure radiation the same way speed is measured by a speedometer. Only instead of a speedometer, we have a rate meter. And instead of miles per hour, we measure the rate in roentgens per hour. We need another device called a dosimeter to record how much radiation a person has accumulated over a period of time.